All righty, my fellow old rollers, welcome to the podcast of Upstream BJJ, Seph Smith. Welcome to the show, Seph. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Super excited, man. Kind of got lucky. You'd kind of put that thing of, what's everybody doing with COVID? And I just said, I started this podcast, and you're like, let's do one. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, what else is there to do, Connect with people.
100%. So to kind of give you the rundown, I'm sure my listeners are probably getting tired of hearing it, but I tell everybody, like in the beginning, what the podcast is about. The whole purpose of this thing is just purely selfish and self-driven. I want to be a really good old roller. And so I want to roll into my 65th birthday being a tough ass dude on the mat that the 22-year-olds look at, like when the bell rings and they're trying to avoid eye contact so they don't get paired up with me, And I don't know necessarily that would be possible, but I do know that it's worth trying to find out. And so the whole purpose of this endeavor is to talk to people who have done a lot of different, from a lot of different backgrounds, both grappling, medical, physical therapy, strength and conditioning, and nutritionists and whatnot, to really find what are the ideal ways to live dangerously in this, sport that we all love, but in a way that is safe. And so it's a hard thing to balance, but that's what we're trying to do. And so excited to get your take on that because you've competed at a very high level and competed a lot, which means that you got some miles. And so we want to kind of talk about that and get some of your perspectives on that and some of your ideas of how you've, preserved yourself and performed at a high level for a long time.
Sure. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 2001, since the beginning of 2001. So almost, 19 years now. And, I definitely don't feel the same as I did when I was, 20 years old when I started, I'm about to turn 40 this year. So, it's a process, but I over the years I feel like there's definitely been a few things that have really changed in my jiu-jitsu that they weren't always that way. So for me, when I first started, I was really scrawny dude, and then first thing I wanted to do was get strong and get all jacked and then be powerful in jiu-jitsu. And and now, it's the complete opposite. I'm trying to use as little strength as possible to achieve any particular goal. I'm always trying to whittle down how much strength I need to use to, get what I want. And more than building new techniques and building a new game in jiu-jitsu, it's more focusing on my state of being when I'm rolling. I'm trying to make sure that I stay calm. I'm trying to stay keep my body relaxed while I'm training and stay loose, because it's those moments where you tense up and you kind of freak out. That's the time where you get injured usually. So as far as being able to keep training for a long time, I think that's your state of being and how you roll is very important. So if there's advice for older people or for anybody, it's just you want to. There's a lot to this. I can go on for a while, but I would say to begin, your state of being is really important. If you're trying to overpower people all the time, you're not doing jiu-jitsu right. You're trying to win, but you're trying to win at all costs. And there is a spirit to proper jiu-jitsu that we should all be trying to tap into. And I think that to do that, we have to allow it to happen. We have to have trust in our technique, and we have to be able to stay relaxed. We have to be able to move with people. A lot of times we tense up when we're trying to stop somebody from moving. We want everything, all the frantic movement to stop so we can just, control things. And I think it's letting go of that and learning to embrace, the chaos and just move with people and believe in our movement and stuff like that, I think is really important. You know, obviously like flexibility and mobility and all that kind of stuff is really important too. You know, like, you know, yoga doesn't hurt anybody. But you know, I honestly think like one of the biggest things that like I see is like a hindrance to young people too, but especially older people, is like the way they roll. It's like, you know, trying to like be explosive when they shouldn't be, or trying to overpower people when they shouldn't. And then, you know, they try to control something they can't control. They're holding on with all their strength, and then somebody makes some movement, and then all of a sudden their shoulder snaps or something, you know. And then you know, it's like it's all those little tweaks that just keep adding up, you know.
Well, something that you mentioned there kind of brought to my mind, and I'm not a linguist, so, you know, anybody out there who hears this and then is like, that guy's fucking wrong, you know, that's understandable. But I have heard and read that one of the translations of the Jew in Jiu-Jitsu is to give way, or the way of giving way. And what you said there was, you know, like moving and not trying to just hold things down, but, you know, to let your opponent have, if they're going to try and power something, let them have that, but make it not work for them. Like, you know, move it in a way that it's not going to be effective. So
well, you think like instead of trying to stop movement, it's like moving with their movement. Like you allow them to move, but does their movement propel you into something that you can use yourself, versus just grabbing them and trying to hold them in a way where you're like, you know, please don't move, please don't move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that's I think a fascinating concept. And, you know, like, to give a little bit of background on myself, I've only been grappling for just about 5 years. I'm coming up on, you know, my 5th anniversary of Jiu-Jitsu in August. So, you know, very young in that journey. But you know, something that I learned pretty quick, you know, dealing with a lot of heavyweights and, you know, MMA fighters in my gym, was that power wasn't going to be the answer. And so you had to find a different answer. And what you're describing there sounds a lot like that process, and probably one that a lot of other people are going through too.
Yeah, well, you know, I always found it kind of interesting to like watch people who, you know, compete at a high level, and you know, like take, for example, like Romulo Bahal or like Michael Lengi. You know, you see these dudes, you know, like they're jacked as shit. You know, they're like super juiced up and like, you know, super like strong dudes. And well, I say juiced up. I don't know if they're on juice. I just mean they look like jacked. Okay? I don't want, you know, them trying to kill me because
we're not trying to get in a fight.
Steroid use. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they look really freaking jacked. But then when you watch them grapple, they look like noodles. They look very loose and relaxed. And it's like, you know, you would expect somebody with like this like huge muscular physique to be, you know, like crushing people. You know what I mean? But it's like, it doesn't look like that because their technique is so good. And I think that that's like, I don't know. It was a big shift for me, you know, like for a while, I think I tried to force things to happen a lot. I rolled in a kind of bullish way, and it just, I don't know, it didn't really get me that far. And then when I started like trying to like feel more and like try to, you know, just stay looser and kind of make it a process to like when I'm rolling with somebody who I can beat up easily, you know, I don't have a problem staying loose. You know, you're relaxed, you're mentally relaxed, right? Because you already know you're in control. You already know there's no threat. I'm sorry, my dog is like being a pain in the ass right now. He keeps wanting to go outside and then inside, and then when he goes outside, he scratches at the door to come in. It's like, get in here. This is all right.
I got 2 dogs that spend all day acting like I was paying them to poop. So I picked up 3-pound turds like 20 times today. I don't even know what these dogs got into, but man, it was the worst. I was like, Jesus Christ, guys, I got to mow.
3-pound curls.
They were serious, man.
But yeah, dude, I just can't deal with the dog shit. You know, like I'll clean it up. I clean it up every time, but like, you know, there's only so many blocks I'm gonna walk with a hot bag of shit in my hand before it just ends up on somebody's roof.
Oh yeah. Well, I could tell you some stories, but if somebody from the HOA here found out about it, I'd be in pretty serious trouble.
Oh man, but yeah, I feel like with jiu-jitsu, like you know, like the more that you can feel when you're rolling with somebody, and the more you relax, and the more you kind of let things happen and learn how to let someone get in on their knee cut, and then when they come close to you, that's when you pull them in even closer enough to get an underhook, and you can come up on half guard sweeps. It's like if you're always pushing the other person away, then it's like you don't even get that opportunity. And I feel like it's almost like conversational. Like when people are rolling, a lot of times they're saying like no, 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 like to everything that you do. And I think it's more like, you have to say yes. Like you have to keep saying yes. Like, yeah, you come in for your knee cut, and then I'm going to give you trouble. And then it's like, if you feel trouble and you back up, I'm going to chase you. And like, being willing to engage and allow things to happen, and really just learning to let go of like giving a fuck whether you win or not in training, but rather like your main focus is improving, and you improve by exchanging. And, some people are there, they can tell you that they're not adverse to exchanging, but when you roll with them, you plainly see that they are. And it's like being in touch with that, being like allowing things to happen, and just seeing where it goes. And then if you get tapped, you get tapped. Who cares?
So for you, it sounds like that was an evolution in your grappling that happened, over a period of time. Was there something that sort of sparked that in you? Was it an injury, or was it just like, okay, if I'm going to improve, I got to start having a more motion-based style and more yes than no?
I would say that my biggest influence in that department is definitely Ryan Hall. Training with him, he's my instructor, and he would be very quick to identify if you felt tense. He'd be like, "You're too tense. You're too tense." And I'd just be like, "Okay, okay." And then sometimes I would be sure that I wasn't tense, and he'd be like, "You're tense," and I'd be like, "I am. Like, I don't think I am," but that like I realized like if you really like try to feel whether you are or not, you can like realize like, oh, I didn't even realize I was, but like I am. Like when this person threatens my guard, and like I'm about to get past, like then I tense up a little bit, and that's usually the moment where things go from bad to worse. And staying loose and just like I don't know, it's weird. Like at this point, it's kind of hard to explain, but I almost feel like it's like you have to just have faith in your ability and trust that like you don't need to tense up to make something happen. You just need to allow your jiu-jitsu to manifest, and it will. But like sometimes we get in our own way of letting that happen. But I think that's like that was a big part of it, of like just him always like kind of drilling it into my head, like you need to be like relaxed while you're training, and if you think you're relaxed, you need to relax more. And just getting older, like I've had a hip surgery, I've had a shoulder surgery, I've had a hernia surgery, like I don't want any more damn surgeries, and
Right.
it's like very easy to get tweaked. And like there's people like at this point, like after this whole COVID thing, I'll roll with this spazziest white belt and be grateful for it. But like honestly, like like dude, like there's people that I don't want to roll with, because like when they roll with me, it's like I don't know, it's like it's something different. Like I'm trying to get better at jiu-jitsu. I don't care who wins or loses. I'm trying to exchange transitions and make something happen. And if something cool happens where I win, cool. If something happens where you win, cool. It doesn't have to be a thing. There's
Sure.
I'll be open with that. But like when people roll with me and I can feel that them beating me is going to mean something to them, and that is like their goal. It's like their goal in the role is to get something on me because I'm me. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm a black belt, so I passed his guard, or I swept him. It's like when I can feel that, like that energy, I don't like it, and I'm just like, oh, like I don't want to roll with this person. And it makes me sometimes get like shitty, and then like I don't want to get shitty with people, so it's like, all right, I don't want to, like, I don't want to be your stepping stone to feel better about yourself. And I don't want to, you know, like turn this into a nasty roll. But like, you know, like it's weird. Like you can feel the intentions in people when you roll with them, you know, like you can feel if they're angry or they're frustrated or they're just doing jiu-jitsu. And like, you know, I don't mind going hard, but it's like, I want it to be like, you did the right thing. And then all of a sudden, like, I got to react quick and we're doing a high paced roll. All right, cool. You know, like, fuck it. Like, you know, you do something slick and you take my back and choke me. All right. Like, I'll try to get you next time, you know, but like, whatever, you know, but like, I don't know, you know, like when you roll with like more beginner people and like, you know, they do that thing where they kind of like play coy and like, you know, kind of like stay back at a distance where like, you know, nothing can happen between the two of us. And then they try to like pounce through your guard and like, you know, do the Hail Mary guard pass. You know, it's just like, oh God, like, come on, man. Like, just get in my guard, get swept, and get submitted because you're, you know, a blue belt and I'm a black belt. And that's how it's supposed to be. But at least we have an interesting exchange. And then we just do it again, you know, and you stay cool and I stay cool and like whatever. Or like we do this stupid dance where, you know, like you like kind of walk to the left a little bit, then you look to the right a little bit, then, you know, you do some little shimmy and then you jump at me from 6 feet away like a fucking spider monkey. And then it's just like, all right, you know, that doesn't really get either of us anywhere. Like, you know, if you want to get better training with a higher level person, you should try to like treat them like they're everybody else. Like try to pass their guard the way that you normally do. Try your best and do it and get stopped. And then like look and see like, okay, how did he stop me from passing the guard? You know, like what did he do? What is the grip that they keep doing that stops me? Oh, every single time I try this knee cut, I got this foot on my shoulder. Okay, how do I stop that? And then you can ask questions. Be like, man, every time I try to knee cut, you get that foot on my shoulder. Be like, oh yeah, that's because I do this. You should do this. And then it's like we have, you know, we build on it. You know what I mean?
Sure, there's an exchange.
Like, yeah, but if you don't do a real guard pass at me, then there's nothing to build on. But then it's like, well, if you were already going to lose anyway at your best, how are you going to do any better by doing some bullshit guard pass? It's not even a real guard pass. It's just you jumping at me like a spaz. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like you need to put like the only hope that you have if you really wanted to win was like just truly believe in what you're doing and try your best. And then if, you know, that works, great. And if it doesn't, well, then try to build on it, you know, and that's like the whole thing. You don't lose, you know, you win or you learn. I mean, like really should be trying to learn all the time, you know? So like, I don't know.
Reminded me
like, I would guess like, you know, what this boils down to for older rollers is, you know, pick your training partners wisely, you know?
What you're saying there reminds me a lot of my, my wrestling coach who we would, you know, I started wrestling the same time, actually after I started jiu-jitsu. So I didn't have the opportunity to do it when I was a kid. There was no wrestling at my school, you know. But one of my training partners was and is a high school wrestling coach. And so he would help me with my wrestling. And of course he's, you know, levels and levels and levels beyond probably where I'll ever be. And so we would work, you know, some technique, and then we would do, you know, just basically the wrestling equivalent of rolling a little bit. And I would, you know, just be really stilted and just kind of like trying to frame and grip fight and just keep him away, you know, because he would shoot so fast that it would just be like, you know, I'm on my butt now again, you know. And one of the things that he said to me was, it's better to die on your sword than, you know, with your back turned. So he was basically saying like, you know, come after me. And even though you're going to lose on it, that's okay. That gives us something to work with and say, this is how you're losing, you know, so we can fix that. So we can tighten this up. But if you're never taking an honest risk, if you're not wagering anything, then we don't know where you are. Like you just suck, you know, like that's all I have to say is like, well, you just ain't no good and really can't do anything with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, there's no way to punch somebody without getting in range to be hit, you know, but you're never going to land a punch on somebody unless you step into that range. It's like, you're never going to get that takedown unless, you know, you're in range to be countered. You know, you're never going to like actually pass somebody's guard unless you get into their guard with the confidence that I can get into your guard, work through all the obstructions in my path, and then come out on the other side. You know, there's no Hail Mary that you can actually do in jiu-jitsu. You can't just jump through people's guards, you know, like when you're passing a high level person's guard, you know, for black belt versus black belt, it's still just like, you know, first you beat somebody's like the bottom of their foot, and then you move a little further down their leg, and then now you got to beat their shin, and then you got to beat that other foot. You might do like 15 different movements until you start to get like any headway through the person's guard, but you have to like get into that fight and go like tit for tat with the other person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like, you know, that's like a mark of somebody who's like really going to get better at jiu-jitsu faster, is somebody who like doesn't care whether they win or lose. They're always willing to, you know, exchange. They're willing to, you know, clash with the other person and get in there and, you know, just like go through the teeth of somebody's guard, you know?
Sure.
Or, you know, like always come after the other person with the intention of trying to attack, you know, like, you know, even if you get countered, you try to attack. You're always trying to get the other person. You know, you're never just trying to survive. Like that idea of just trying to survive and counting that as a victory is like, you know, it's like bullshit, right? It's like, it just doesn't really get you anywhere. You know, like if at the end of it, you're like, well, you know, nobody got tapped and nothing happened, so that's a plus. You know, that's like, all right, cool. You know?
I think there's a case to be made for that, purely just on the sense of like, if you're somebody who is really freaking out over pressure, or if you're having a lot of trouble dealing with, you know, like being in a bad position, of spending a certain amount of time just surviving in it, but that's for a purpose. That's not going to be your jiu-jitsu. It's just you're working on this one thing, which is I got to learn how to be okay with this bad position so that I can get moving intelligently.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, I think like, you know, the beginning process of like learning how to deal with like being on the bottom of the mount, or dealing with, you know, having somebody on your back, is like first just not getting tapped, you know, and then after that, you know, then, you know, it's like, okay, now that I've like learned how to survive in this position, now I can learn, you know, how to escape, how I can make my movements towards getting out of this. But that should all lead towards, you know, getting to a better position where then you can start attacking again, you know. And I think there is like something to be said for like, you know, specific training with different intentions at different times. I don't think, you know, training needs to always be the same. So like, you know, sometimes I do just like, I don't try to attack my students. I'm just like, I'm just going to not let anyone pass my guard today, because today my focus is just, you know, just not letting anybody pass my guard. It's like just building up my guard retention, you know, or maybe if it's like starting to get too easy, then it's like, okay, I'll let them through my guard like 3/4 of the way, and then I'll try to get my guard back, something like that, you know? But like when you think about like building skills for competing, it's like, you should always be dangerous, you know, like you shouldn't be stalling. You should be like, you know, always trying to get that win. I had a match. It was one of the most heartbreaking matches of my life, but it was a good lesson. It was the finals of the Pans at Brown Belt Master 1, and I had like, I think 3 matches leading up till the finals match. Maybe it was 4. I think it was 3. I had 3 matches leading up to my 4th match, and the 4th match was against this guy Ben Solomon, and he was a good he's a good brown belt at the time, under Hamla Bahal, and everybody told me like, look out for his collar chokes, like look out for his loop chokes and stuff like that. And we had our match, and very early on in the match, he went for a choke on me, and I was able to like shrug it off and get past it. And then, you know, the match progressed, and I was winning the match. I was like, you know, I had passed this guard. I had gotten into like an arm triangle. He had like did some funky grip to get out of the arm triangle, but I almost got onto his back. And, you know, there was probably like less than a minute left in the match, and I was up on points, and I was, you know, looked like I was cruising into the gold medal round, and I was, you know, pretty stoked on that. And then do like 30 seconds left or some shit, he put his hands up in my collar and snatched me up into a choke, you know, and he finished me with it. Like, I tried so hard to just like, you know, ride it out, and, you know, even if I get like, you know, where I'm only looking through a pinhole of consciousness, like, you know, whatever, who cares? You know, as long as I get my hand raised at the end. But dude, I was about to go out and you know, I knew it, and I tapped out, and it just fucking sucked. But it was cool. It was cool to know that like he always had something at the ready. Like, you know, even if like I was coming after him, he was always looking for his opportunity to attack me and to, you know, get something on me. And you know, he had his bread and butter, and when he saw his opportunity, he took it, you know. So, you know, kudos to him. Good job, Ben. But you know, I think it's like, you know, always looking for the attack, no matter what, is important.
You know, you raise an interesting point with that, because what we were just talking about was like, you know, not sort of being like a spazzy, like freaking out, attacking, you know, D-bag. And then the converse to that is to always have a technical attack. Like what happened to you was not untechnical and probably was unplanned. I don't think anybody plans to get their guard passed in competition. That's never part of their game plan. But, you know, he had an escape hatch, you know, that was always like, you know, in his back pocket if he needed it. And, and that was a technical, you know, way of addressing the problem that you presented, which is that's a fascinating, you know, because we always say, you know, we have our jiu-jitsu sayings, position before submission and all that. But sometimes, you know, like an ugly submission attempt that is under control might get you back to your position. You know, like I think one of the examples is the Kimura trap while being passed. You know, like we're not trying to get our guard passed, but if you can get that Kimura grip, suddenly you know you can get back to a safe position with it.
Yeah, sure. And like, you know, if you know all the ins and outs of that position, you know, like all you need is to establish that grip, you know, and then you're in your game. So yeah, those are cool.
And those little tricks and tools like that, especially for the old rollers, like we don't have the advantage of, you know, like the youth and speed necessarily, and maybe, you know, the explosiveness, but, you know, a little bit of subterfuge and, you know, like willing to stab somebody in the back, so to speak.
Yeah. But, you know, honestly, I don't think that old people should roll differently than young people, you know, in the sense that like, oh, well, my strategy is like, you know, it's that much different. It's, you know, like jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, movement is movement, you know, like maybe like, yeah, like if you're not super flexible, you're not going to be going for berimbolos and stuff like that. But the idea like of strategy, I don't think really needs to change that much. You know, it's just like I don't know. Sometimes like I'll work with some of my older students, and I feel like I have to kind of like work that game, that kind of mind frame out of them, as much as like, you know, feeling like they need to change up things, you know, because of who they are, where they are. It's like, no, like you should always be trying, you know, you should be relaxed. You should always be coming at me, trying to get me. You should, you know, like try your best to retain your guard. I mean, like, yeah, like if, you know, you get your guard passed, then like you need to have like an answer for that. But like otherwise, you know, like, you know, we're all kind of working on the same thing to the best of our ability. You know what I mean? Like we're all working on jiu-jitsu. It's not like your jiu-jitsu needs to be that much different than mine, or mine versus yours, you know, based off of, you know, age or whatever. I mean, it's just like, I think like, yeah, different body types and stuff are going to lend themselves to different, you know, games. But for the most part, like the idea of jiu-jitsu, the strategy, you know, movement and stuff, I think it's kind of the same, you know?
Well, I think if I misspoke, which is certainly likely, I'm just, you know, like this dumb hillbilly from Kentucky most of the time. It may have sounded like I was saying like an old player's game has to be purely subterfuge, and that's not true either. The Kimura trap is effective at 22. It's also effective, I think, at 52 and 62 and 72. Like it's a control position. And if you have a good understanding of the inner workings of that position, more so than your opponent, then most of the time you will win from there, regardless of age, you know, like, so just things like that. I'm not trying to sell like Kimura trap DVDs. I'm only saying that, you know, there are, just like you said, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. There are universal things that if we if we access them, if we take advantage of them, then regardless of age, I believe we will be effective.
Yeah. I think for older rollers, like mobility is really important. I think like doing yoga or doing like regular stretching. I mean, I feel like, I'm almost 40 now, but I'm still just about as flexible as I ever was. I think just because I've been doing jiu-jitsu the whole time, but I think that for people who haven't done jiu-jitsu the whole time, or getting into it kind of late in the game, maybe they haven't built up that flexibility. But doing that kind of, doing like yoga or doing like whatever kind of stretching it takes to like increase your mobility, that can be sometimes worth more than the jiu-jitsu itself. Like there's certain people that I think like, they could benefit from mobility and flexibility more than they could, like a month of that versus a month of jiu-jitsu might be more effective, overall than just training jiu-jitsu itself. Like, I think like learning to get your body moving as best you can is going to be always like a lifelong endeavor,
Mm-hmm.
and, just like, all I'm saying is like, I think that like, from my experience, and I'm not saying this applies to you, but from my experience, like a lot of times where I've dealt with, older grapplers, it's like sometimes they're looking for a trick to beat the young guys. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there is no trick. I just think like you have to get good at jiu-jitsu, and that's it,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
think
kind of,
that's
kind of
absolutely,
universal.
yeah, that's totally, a fair statement. And I would be the first to admit guilt that I'm always looking for a trick. Like if I
Oh,
could
we
find
all
something.
are. I mean, when there is a full trick, we all get stoked on it. Like, oh, this choke, no one's going to see it coming, dude. I'm going to hit everybody. Like, I think that's, we all get stoked about that.
Yeah. What was it that I like to do a lot? There was an escape from the arm triangle that I've got really comfortable with, where I could spin around and get somebody in a key lock, and I
How
got.
dare you?
Yeah. Well,
That's my favorite submission. So I'd
the
be
arm
really
triangle.
bummed if I ended up getting, I'd be real bummed if I got key locked out of it, but I'm sure it could
Well,
happen.
the arm triangle is the only thing I've ever been put out with. So, I had to go on a mission to figure out how to deal with it, because it seems like I'm especially susceptible to that submission.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I kind of discovered this way that I could run out of it if I could get to my side, and then if I was lucky, I could key lock the person on the backside, like running out the back door. And that worked for like 3 months, and I was like, yeah, I got this shit. Like nobody can arm triangle me. And then all of a sudden, everybody just started arm triangling me and just beating that escape. Like it was just like, oh man, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, it got real wonky for a second. Can you hear me? It's like going in slow motion.
Sorry. Yeah, loud and clear. Do you hear?
Yeah.
There you are.
Cool.
Yeah. All I was saying is that, my trick worked until it stopped working.
Yeah.
And I still go for it, but I had to pair it with some other stuff to try and get out. But most of the time, if you're in an arm triangle, well, you're toast. Like that's just how it is.
Yeah. That's a rough spot to be in.
So what you've talked about, like in this conversation, like teaching some we'll call ourselves youth impaired grapplers. And you yourself, you're 39. I'm 39 too. You've made like a couple, at least the one DVD with the reverse De La Hiva, and there's a lot of inversion in it. And I know a lot of people, especially as we age, get a little bit shy about inverting. But from watching your material on that, you use a lot of framing and stuff so that you're not getting smashed while being inverted. And I think that you may have found some ways to do that safely. And I kind of wanted you to kind of expand on that, if that was a process of elimination, or did you how did you come to those framing patterns and whatnot to keep yourself safe?
Well, I feel like there's certain concepts that kind of guide my jiu-jitsu. One of which is like, when someone's trying to pass your guard, you're going to be trying to maintain frames in between you and them that are going to kind of exist inside of their frame. So I call this concept like the idea of inside control. Like imagine, if we were just standing in front of each other and you had your two arms on my shoulders, like you had your hands on my shoulders, right? Well, if I try to walk forward, I can't come closer, right? But if I swim my hands, I palm on the inside of yours and I put them on the side of your shoulders. So you're still grabbing my shoulders, but your arms are on the outside of mine. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Then I can manage the distance between the two of us, right? Because if you try to get close to me, I can hold you back, but I also can like use my grips to make like a duck under or something like that. Okay. So that's why like in wrestling, they always say like, look for inside ties, right? And this kind of exists, not only on the feet with your arms, but also like with your legs inside of the arms of your opponent who's trying to pass your guard, or like your forearms, your frames. So, when somebody is trying to pass your guard in reverse De La Riva, you're going to be like kind of knee to elbow with both sides of your body, and you have your frames inside of theirs. So as long as you have that inside control, they're not going to pass your guard. So yeah, like that idea really governs the framing aspect. As far as the inverting aspect, I don't actually get like stacked up on my neck when I do that. Like I spin under the person, but it's almost like I'm just like in a little ball doing like a breakdancer's backspin. You know what I mean? Not that I can do
yes,
that,
sir.
but it's just like you're spinning on your back, like, because you're bringing your knees and elbows together like in a little ball, but like you're not actually like jacked up on your neck that much, and you shouldn't be. Like you should be, on that space between your shoulder blades, but not like up on your neck. So I think like certain games like that, maybe people see it and they think like, oh, well, you have to invert to be able to do it. But it's like upside down guard, like Ryan Hall, like, that's going to be maybe a position that's going to be a little more rough if somebody jumps on you while you're upside down like that. But like if you do reverse De La Riva properly, you actually don't have the person crushing you, like when you're trying to spin under them. You're kind of just spinning like a top underneath of them. So
it's more of a rotation than an inversion over your head.
Yeah, it's off balancing the person with your guard, and then when you shift their weight over to the side, you spin under the light aspect of their body. Like you're going to put their weight on one leg, and then you're spinning under the leg that doesn't have the weight on it anymore, and then that's going to be the inversion, so to speak, which is not really in my mind an inversion, but rather just like a spin. So
now that makes perfect sense, and I guess I was observing that, but not really putting two and two together. So I'm really glad that got to talk to you and kind of clear that up, because it's very clear that you're under no pressure. Another element that you brought up there was off balancing the person away from the side that you're gonna be either spinning under or attacking. And especially as we age, I think this is important obviously for anybody, but especially as we age, like if you're trying to attack something that's heavy or balanced, it's going to be really hard and take a lot of effort. But if you off balance, then suddenly your attacks become, a lot less, they have a lot less effort required, but also I think are probably a lot safer and potentially a whole lot more effective too.
Yeah, I think it's important to have like kind of an internal governor or regulator on how much strength you put into anything. And when you try to move something and it feels too hard to move, it's not the right answer. Like the right answer is going to be, the easier path. There always is an easy path. One thing feels super hard, but right next door is something that, feels kind of effortless, right? And like we all know what it feels like to do like the perfect sweep at the perfect time,
Sure.
Where like, it feels effortless. And you're like, okay, well, if it exists there, it should exist everywhere, It shouldn't be like sometimes sweeping somebody is super hard, and then sometimes it's like, they just fall over. I mean, sometimes you have to chain like 15 movements together to get to that end result, but like everything shouldn't be like a grind, And obviously, like, you know, you go to competition and there's 15 seconds left and you need to get that fucking sweep. Well, then you do, you make it happen
Sure,
however
sure.
you need to. But like in training, you know, you should be like following the path of least resistance. And so you have to search for that. And, you know, I think that's an important thing. Like, at least for me, like if anything feels too hard, I just don't do it, you know? And that's like, you know, I'm just, my goal in jiu-jitsu is to be as lazy as possible and still be effective. And
Yeah,
so as I get older, it's a, you know, if I can make my skill keep up with the decline of my age, well, then I should be okay, you know, like.
sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Kind of moving in a different direction, and that was an awesome explanation. I think you gave me a lot that I've got to think about in terms of, you know, how I'm going to play, especially, you know, considering you know, inverting and spinning under versus rolling over my neck or things like that. Um, and that concept of the path of least resistance is something that in my development I've started to sense, but it took a long time for me. I'm not, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people pick that up a lot faster than I did. And, you know, maybe I chose like the wrong parents or something because I ain't that bright, but like my genetic limits are a little lower than I would like. But something just like you said, if you can continue to refine that skill as you age, and that gets better as the body starts to change, as there maybe there's some decline, then you can still stay at the same level, maybe even continue to elevate levels.
Right, right. Well, I think it's like, I think that that's like the goal, right? It's like there's never a destination in this. It's like always the process, right? You're always trying to whittle down, like, you know, you're trying to build like in my mind, it's like we're trying to build our skill of like connection to the other person. Because like, you know, nobody does jujitsu in a vacuum. You're doing everything that you do in response to your opponent, which means that like you have to be able to connect to the other person. And when you get close to them, you can feel what they're doing. You know, you're kind of following them wherever they go. And, you know, if they push too hard one way, well, then you can sweep them. But if, like, you know, they're not pushing, they're kind of like stable in their base, then you have to start like wobbling the metronome. You know, you have to start pushing one way until they push back. And then, you know, when they push back, use that against them. And then when they, you know, withdraw from that, you keep, you know, rocking the person until something breaks and, you know, you can come up on top or whatever it is. And then like that need to like force the sweep in the first attack, you know, that's where it becomes a grind. You know, like if someone's in a strong base and you just try to run through them, it's going to feel really hard, you know.
Sure.
So I think it's like being relaxed and being kind of soft, and like you can feel like when I push into this person, they push back a little bit, and I can immediately use that. You know, that's the real skill, is like that connection. And, you know, you connect to the other person and you're you know, it's like a conversation. You connect to the person, you start to come up for the sweep, and you're kind of asking the person, like, are you going to stop me with my sweep? And if they do, you're like, I thought so. And then as soon as they push back, like, you know, you use that to gain more energy into the, you know, to move them in the other direction. And there's certain concepts that I think like are important. Like, you know, like if you have an attack like from the bottom that goes in a particular direction, like think about like your basic hip bump sweep from close guard, right? Like that goes backwards to the back corner. But like when you, if all you had is the hip bump sweep, well, then you're going to have a hard time, because like you're going to try to push them backwards. They're going to push back into you. And then sometimes it cancels out. But it's like if you go for your hip bump sweep, knowing that they're probably going to push back, and when they push back, you can use that to like accelerate into an armbar or something like that. Well, now you have like attacks in two directions, right? You think about an armbar, you're pulling the person in. So then like when you're pulling them in and then they go to pull back against you pulling them in, then you can accelerate into the hip bump. So now you have like two things that go in opposite direction that work together, you know? So it's like finding that in all the different positions. It's like, okay, I have the attack where I drive them this way, and when they push back, I have the counter to that. And like, you know, knowing, like using that idea to know which things to chain together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight that I think, especially, you know, someone, you know, in their first, you know, 6 months to 2 years, who's trying to develop that game and trying to put pieces together, you know, being able to sense like if I can move things in opposite directions and find things that work with those, you know, those kind of 1-2 punches, then you start going from like not very effective to suddenly you can be pretty dangerous pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. As long as they're in your, like, starting out for beginners, a lot of times close guard's a great place to start. And just like, it's not just having an arm bar and having a bump sweep. It's having an arm bar and a bump sweep, and then learning how to make those two things interact. It's like, if you had a guitar and you had two different chords, and then learning how to bounce back and forth between those two things, it's like they both exist on their own, but what the real skill is like being able to connect them, make them interact, and like you think of like a jiu-jitsu position as kind of like a chord with your fingers, but it's with your whole body, like you assume like a position of the arm bar, you assume the position of like the bump sweep, you have to be like on call, be able to make your body, create that shape, and then like once you do enough reps of each one where exactly where your fingers would be on the board, so to speak, then it's like, okay, I've got that part down. Now let's see if I can make these like two things interact. And it's like you have A and B, B to A, then you add C into it, and then you have like a little game, and that's like what we should be looking for in like every position. I think like, two or three things that you can make interact really well, and it's always going to be, pretty effective. It's going to make your game get better.
Well, that's a really beautiful description. Like I said, I'm really glad that I got to talk to you, because I think you made some things really clear, that I was kind of trying to piece together. To kind of move in a different direction, we've talked, a lot of technical things and a little bit of competition stuff. Let's talk about the culture that you try to maintain at Upstream BJJ, and then how do you maintain it? How do you cultivate it? And then what do you want to? How do you want to see that kind of flow through your student body?
Well, I think like part of it ties into the technical aspect of like how I want people to train. I want people to train without the intention of always trying to win and trying to kill each other, but like to always just be trying to get better with jiu-jitsu, and always trying to, not stall and like, hold the other person away, but like I try to get my students as much as I can to approach jiu-jitsu properly, or at least what I consider to be, the proper approach to jiu-jitsu, like to, try to like actually go after it, but not have like a big ego about it, not feel like there's a need to protect their ego, but rather like, just I talk about these things all the time. Like my students that probably think I sound like a broken record, but like, it's like you can talk about it, but then you'll see somebody starting to do, to do what you don't want them to do. And you have to keep saying like, right there, that's you doing that thing. You know what I mean? Not like I'm trying to yell at them or call them an asshole for it, but like, just like trying to be that voice that like identifies, when people are not doing the right thing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I try to keep my gym very laid back, like we're not osing every 5 seconds and, bowing onto the mat, then bowing in, it's like, if you want to bow onto the mat, that's fine. We bow at the beginning of class, we bow at the end of the class, and that's about as formal as it gets. I try to keep kind of a fun, laid back atmosphere, but I also, want the guys to train, hard. I don't want it to be like, I don't know. I have different levels of classes at my academy. So we have like classes for super beginners where there's no rolling at all, and it's like a shorter class. Then they can, kind of quickly graduate out of that class into like a level 2 class where there is rolling and, there's a lot of positional sparring. Like we do have just open sparring, but we do a lot of positional sparring in my academy where we start in position and like, okay, like you're going to start in half guard with an underhook. If you get on top and you get a sweep, then y'all just restart, same person on top, same person on bottom. You know what I mean? Then at like the end of 3 minutes, like we'll flip it. Now the other person gets to start. But I think it's important to like force people to start in like a variety of different positions. Start with somebody on your back, have a clear goal, and then as soon as that goal is achieved, like restart, instead of just like every day, just like, all right, guys, just, go roll. Because like a lot of times, you might have worked on half guard all week, and then, you tell the guys to go roll, and like you won't see half guard the whole match. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, no, we should like isolate certain things, know exactly what we need to do in each one of those positions, and round it out. But at the end of every week, we have a thing called marathon roll. It's every Friday. And with that, we just do 11 5-minute rounds, and there's a 1-minute break, and you have to do all the rounds, but it's just free sparring. And that's like, there's no mat fee for that. So like we invite a lot of people from other academies to come, take part in that. And a lot of people do, and that's kind of cool. I think it's like cool to be like culturally like open, like not one of those schools that calls everybody a creonche because they, went to another academy. Like, I don't care. I encourage my students to go to other academies. I go to other academies sometimes and train. Like, I think that that's like important. Because if you believe in your jiu-jitsu and you believe in like what you're pumping out of your academy, why do you care if one of your students went to an open mat at another school? Like,
Sure.
Are you scared that like they're going to see that it's better over there and then want to leave you? I mean, if that's the case, they should probably go anyway. It's like, I think like, I don't know. I know that it's a business too, but some of that kind of controlling stuff I think is kind of lame. So, I hope that my students are happy where they are. And if, they're not, then, I hope they can go find a better place. But, it seems like most of our students are pretty happy. And
yeah, you're providing a good product and you have confidence in it is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. At least I hope so. I mean, they're sticking around so far. Maybe I just brainwashed them, but, yeah.
Well, that's a good trick too. That's a skill.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think like that's for the most part it. We just try to have like technical training. We're not always like trying to win every second, but we're always trying to learn new skills, build new things, new skills. Like, for the longest time, I didn't like the worm guard because I didn't really understand it. And like every time I'd see it, I'd just be like, oh, like I don't want to do all this shit with lapels and stuff. But then it was like I'm seeing everybody using it at high levels, and people are getting beat with it, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be doing a disservice to my students if I don't learn that stuff, and if I just like tell them not to learn it, it's stupid because I don't get it. Well, then that's dumb. So I went to a Keenan seminar, and I've been like playing with it a lot. Now I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. I think it's like, I think it's good to keep growing your jiu-jitsu, and like as like an instructor, I try to like always do that myself, and I hope that by me doing that, it's like going to rub off on my students. Like they're going to see that like I want to bring in higher level people. I want to have seminars at the academy with people that can kick my ass, and I'll let those people kick my ass in front of everybody. And I don't try to like hold on to some idea that I'm invincible or whatever. Like, most of my students have seen me get beat up at one time or another, but like, we're all in this together. And I think it's also like, when I continue to compete now, it makes them want to compete too. So I don't know. I think there's a level of like leadership through example, that you want to provide. So I don't know, I think that's like kind of outlines like the normal operation of upstream jiu-jitsu. We're just, training regularly, and, we go hard. We, try to like have certain standards, like in our advanced classes and for our marathon rolls, like, if we're going to do 11 5-minute rounds with 1-minute break, like you need to, use that 1-minute break to get your water or find a new partner and be ready to go on the bell. We don't take rounds out, just because people are tired or whatever. Obviously for people who are beginning jiu-jitsu and they're just starting to get into the rolling, like they may be at different fitness levels, and maybe they have to take a round out. And then for that, like we just say like, hey, that's fine. You took a round out today. Maybe, you take less time out tomorrow, or maybe next week it takes, whatever. But like always keep working towards that goal. For our advanced classes, like we definitely, are a little harder, but you kind of have to graduate to that class anyway. But
it sounds like what you're describing too is that if somebody needs to take a round off, for like a biological reason, like if then yeah, that's no big deal. But if you're taking the round off because you're tired and you're scared you're going to lose, that's not an acceptable reason.
Exactly. If you're injured or something is happening that like you absolutely have to, obviously, yeah. But like, yeah, that just because like I'm tired and like I'm getting beat up now, and I don't like the way that feels. Like, fuck that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we
No,
want to
I'm
push
with you on
it.
that.
Yeah, so I think it's like, these things can be achieved where you have certain standards of like, wanting your guys to push themselves and develop their jiu-jitsu, but at the same time like not being super rigid. And I like having a laid back atmosphere where people can joke and have a good time, and keep it loose.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, honestly, I think we've gotten a lot of great info from you. I think that's actually a really beautiful place to pause. I definitely think we want to have you back and go over some more things. But for now, this has been an awesome chat. If some of my old Roller Nation wants to look into Upstream or yourself, how would they look you up online?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, or they can find me on Instagram at Seph Will Kill You, or they can
I
go
was
to
so hoping you would say that.
or there's Upstream BJJ. I probably have more. Honestly, I have more content on my own Instagram. And if anybody wants to email me about anything, they can email me at sephsmithbjj@gmail.com. Otherwise, just use social media, DM me or whatever questions they have. I'd be happy to answer.
Well, Seph, thank you so much for your time and your insights. You gave me a lot of really great ideas, and I definitely think that you passed on some stuff that my fellow old rollers can put to use too. Really
Awesome.
really exciting to talk to you. And those of you who may listen to this later on, once we're past this COVID thing, won't understand. Hopefully, like this will be out of our minds. But we're gonna get through this crap together, and we'll see you on the mats.
Hell yeah.
Alrighty. Here, I had a technical difficulty with the stop button.